You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! Travel beyond the boundaries of time and memory. Susan Sizer Bogey's Deep Time takes us on a profound journey through love, loss, and the mysteries that shape who we are. Put your hands together and welcome Susan to the show. Thank you so much, Joni, for joining me for this episode of On the Air with Florenza, and particularly thank you for our offline chat, because that was an interview in itself. So we're going to dive in with our toast. And for those who are just joining us, initially Joni had water, and then she educated me that that is sacrilegious in the Italian community and that one must never toast with water. So I'm putting you all on notice. If you come on this show, you better don't have water.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. And now what are you drinking as you sip?
Wine. It's like sparkling wine.
Oh, so
5 o'clock somewhere.
It is. I say 6 a.m. somewhere.
Yes.
So mine is a combination. I started out with a strawberry margarita with extra vodka, extra tequila. And then I walked by a sangria and I thought, it's liquid. Let's throw them together. So it's a sangria.
Oh,
you know what? It's really good.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like your glass too.
It matches my glasses. Yes.
Very funny.
I know, I am. So we are talking about your very intriguing book, Vatican Daughter. And listen, first, tell us a little bit about you, and then I am going to dive right in head first with this book because I am so intrigued.
Thank you. Well, I'm a retired registered nurse. I married a doctor, so you can't really work and be married to a doctor because they're never home, and I had 3 kids I had to take care of. So I quit nursing, although you never really quit it because people are always flocking to my house.
Ding dong.
What do you think this is? I got a rash, So, oh, you took your sister's penicillin. That could be why. Oh yeah, I get everything. Anyway, so not one. I always wrote. I always enjoyed writing, and I wrote bad poetry, of course, when I was a kid. And
didn't we all?
Oh, guess so. Every novelist started out writing bad poetry, teenage angst. Yeah.
Yes.
So I did that. And then people would ask me, oh, could you write this letter for me? Could you write, I need this, I need that. So I would write, but I'm not one to wing it. So I needed to be armed. So I went to a diploma nursing school back in the day, 100 years ago. And then I got accepted to Sarah Lawrence as a returning adult student, which was fabulous. You had to work, it was so like, they ease you into it. They don't have it anymore, unfortunately, but they ease you into it. So you start out with adults, in one house where you're all together.
Yeah.
Who knew, 18-year-olds were adults or 20-year-olds were adults, but go figure, they were. So I finished there. I was the eldest graduate. Vera Wang did the commencement speech, and very nice. And so I was interviewed by the local newspaper. So if you Google somewhere, I'm connected to Vera Wang, which I don't know how, but things happen. So that was interesting. And then right after I graduated in 2013 with a whole bunch of kids, all my friends are like kids, I got jury duty. I started my first book while I was a student in a workshop. And I had this like fabulous professor. My last writing professor at Sarah Lawrence was Martha Southgate. She was so amazing to me. And she's a little younger than I am, but we were the same kind of vintage. So she would like
I
kept
love that vintage. I am vintage, people.
she'd slide the manuscript over to me and she goes, nah, nah, And then when I rewrote it so many times, she wrote, "You've come a long way, baby," from the Virginia Slims commercial back in
Yes,
the day.
I remember
So
those.
I know you would get this. So it was just fun to be older.
Hmm.
And so then I got picked for a criminal, very scary federal criminal court case
Hmm.
and accepted to Columbia University on the same day. So Columbia University, I just applied as a lark. I never in a
Right,
zillion years thought, and they call you up to tell you got accepted. So I got home from jury duty like, oh my God, 2 months of
right.
middle court. Very scary.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. So I came home and my son said, "Well, a professor Kirschenbaum called you from Columbia." I'm like, "What?" Here's her number, call her back. So I said, "Is this a joke?" So she's like, "No, you got accepted." So that was great. So I went, was still light years older than everybody else. Although
Uh-huh.
I was a nonfiction writer who was older than me. So I was like, alien, another alien. But it was so much fun because the kids, they really, I shouldn't call them kids, the young adults,
Yeah.
they went from high school, from daddy and mommy to high
Hmm.
school to
Hmm.
college to graduate school without any real life
Life
experience.
experience.
So
Hmm.
their writing was good. Most of them were really good writers, but they had nothing to write about.
Yeah.
They'd write about except for my group. Oh, they were fabulous. My thesis group, they were just fantastic. One was published, fabulous book. I'm going to tell her to go on your show. You'll love her. If she has time now, she has baby.
Uh-huh.
She wrote Conjure Women. And, a lot of them write medical stuff that's
Right.
just so far-fetched. So I helped her and she acknowledged me in the book. It was great. So I had a wonderful time. I Pulitzer Prize award-winning professors, they'll
Uh-huh.
never help you, but it was a wonderful experience.
Now looking back at the the sequence of events for yourself, right? And hindsight is always 2020. If you were given the opportunity to dive right into the writing side of Joni, would you have wanted to explore that earlier, like some of your classmates, or do you feel for you that the progression was
Yeah,
natural and it was the way it needed to be?
exactly.
Yeah,
Although commuting to Columbia was like an Olympic event,
yeah.
6 trains and whatever, but I don't think I'd do it now because I'm
Yeah.
tired, but yeah, definitely. I read 1,200 pages a week at
I heard
Columbia.
you say that. That is like insane. And
Um,
people don't realize that in order to be a good writer, you really need to be a dedicated reader as
Including my
well.
classmates, because they were told there were 75 accepted students in the fiction writing program,
Hmm.
and that was the biggest class ever at Columbia, so at the graduate level. And so the professor in charge of the chair, she got up the first day and said, "Now don't let the reading get in the way of your writing. You don't tell that to a young person because
Yeah.
I was in seminars where they didn't read the
Yeah.
book. How do you
Yeah.
discuss it?" And then they made fun of me for reading it, including the professor. Because who read the book? Who read the whole book? Yes, I do what I'm told. I'm old.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it was interesting, but everybody did well and it was fun. They treated me like one of them. In fact, my thesis professor sadly died. She was very young, but her book was made into a movie. So post after she
Uh-huh.
died, which is like my biggest fear. My kids will get the royalties.
Yeah.
But
Now,
and
this writing part of Joni, um, being that it started as most of us do in the form of poetry, What does your family say now with the fact that you are published? And what is that like to be able to present to them this finished product? You're just like, yeah, they're just like, whatever, mom.
Exactly. They don't care. No. And in fact, Professor Kirstenbaum, she wrote 7 novels and not one of her family members read it. So that's how it usually is. I don't know what it is. Like, who knows what
Yeah.
they're. My cousin's very supportive. I have a cousin who's a psychologist and he's just over the moon for my book. So
Yeah.
he lives in Boston. I don't see him much, but he's supportive. But my family, no. I mean,
They're just like, you're Joni.
yeah, whatever. You have any
Now,
money,
yeah. Now, I do want to jump into the novel because very interesting subject. And the novel was inspired by the real life 1859 kidnappings of Jewish children. I believe I have this correct, by Pope Pius the Ninth. I had never heard of it. So I'm like
Exactly.
behind.
I never
Like,
heard of it either.
why did you choose this? Like,
I'll
or
tell
how
you
did
what
this story
happened.
make its way in?
I had the idea. We go to Italy a lot. So I was in Rome and I had this idea, just like a flash, like
Hmm.
the beats hit, like, oh my God, this would be a good story. But I had no, I had the title. I always get the title first.
Yeah.
And I had an idea, but I had no idea where it was going to go. So I wrote a brief outline. I put it aside for, I want to say, 7, 8 years. I
Oh,
just left it
wow.
because I was doing other things,
Hmm.
and percolated a little bit. And then um, I went to Rome. I walked 88 miles in Rome in 2019, got COVID before anybody else on the planet.
Yeah.
And then I came home and banged it out. Like I wrote 8 hours a day
Hmm.
and I was researching because the main one of the main characters, she goes back to live with her former landlady who's
Hmm.
Jewish. I was researching Jewish last names, and it took me down a rabbit hole where I discovered this story. So there's a professor at Brown, David Kurtzer, who wrote a book about the kidnapping of Eduardo Mortara at the age of 6
Hmm.
by the Pope, because the Jews were sequestered in the ghetto, and they were wealthy merchants. I don't know if you want to hear the whole.
No, yeah. I mean, I've never heard of it. So this
Okay,
was like
yeah. So
so intriguing.
right. Anyway, so I got the book and it's about, a family, a Jewish family in Bologna. And they were one of many, but they were the first, I guess, for this to happen to. So the Pope was in charge. It was the Papal States. It wasn't Italy, wasn't unified at that
Hmm.
time. So what happened was the wealthy merchants would have um, uh, illiterate Christian girls as servants because they could work on the Sabbath, and the Jewish
Oh,
servant girls couldn't. So
right.
this servant girl sees the mother and father sitting vigil around this kid's bedside at the age of 3. He had some illness, and she assumed he was dying. So when the parents left, she baptized the kid, and then a couple of years later, she was just thinking about it. This is all true. She confessed to the parish priest who reported it to the Vatican because it was illegal for a Jewish family to raise a Christian child, and they swooped in and ripped the kid out of the family, and the family could never get the kid back. So they put a spin on it that, oh, he wanted it. He was 6, seriously. And he became a priest, and it was pretty miserable story, but
Now, what would have happened to the child, though, seeing as though that was the law? What would have the alternative have been for the child to remain in that home?
wouldn't allow it. The Pope was in charge.
The Pope wouldn't allow it, but the family didn't have a problem with the child. It was the Pope having a problem.
Well, no, the child was fine. It was a normal 6-year-old. It was just a fleeting illness. And that was the law. And they found out the papal state, the Pope found out about it. And that was their law. And they came and took the kid. They took many, but it was recently a documentary sort of film, but it kind of fizzled out. It was made. I know that contacted Professor Kurtzer. He was very helpful. And I said, so the same question you have, like, why is this not more well known? And he said the Jews don't even know about it. They were so embarrassed by that they allowed this to happen. They suppressed the story. And then, of course, eventually the Christian Catholics became embarrassed too that they did this. So, boom, that's it. So he wrote a book. He got a Pulitzer, a very interesting guy. And he was very nice and gracious and helped me. So but that was like I had already started the story so that I was able to weave. I don't know. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, where did all this come from?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I weaved it in, because the character who's the landlady, of course, Sophia is the mother, and she had lost her child to her Pope
Hmm.
boyfriend. And so she said, no one will, I can't, this is impossible to fight them and no one will believe it. And the landlady said, trust me, they'll believe it. And she
They'll
tells
believe it.
the story, and then she takes the book of his off the shelf. And so, like I weave it in there. So it's true and fiction at the same time. So
What was that process of blending? Because one of the things that the book was truly praised for was in the way that you blend the historical truths and suspenseful storytelling. Um, and you've talked about the research that it went into crafting the Vatican Daughter, but what was your most surprising, shocking, real life discovery outside of the story itself, right? That just blew me away. But what
right.
else was so surprising in terms of your
Well,
discovery?
to learn that no matter, I did research on the papacy, of course, and to learn that no matter what a pope does, he's in charge and he's judge, jury, and that's
Yeah.
it. So they can't really be tried for a crime. And that was, I thought, oh my goodness, these days you never know. So
Yeah.
there's also another book coming out. That'll be submitted in the summer.
Hmm.
That continues the story. So yeah. I kept at it, and I have a third one in my head.
About it.
Yeah, I
When
do
you
a lot of research.
when you were putting together like the information, because it is dark and it can be as a mother, right? Like depressing in a sense because you're putting yourself in the shoes of these parents that were losing their children. How did you balance your own emotions as a parent when you were putting
Right.
together this story, or did you allow those feelings to surface so that you have that authenticity of the emotion?
Well, yes, of course, you can't help but relate, to it. So of course, but I weave in, the sights, the sounds, the smells, and the landscape of Italy, which, they go out to dinner and they order
Yeah.
food and they cook and this and that. So it kind of diffuses the story, in a sense. And then the thriller elements, of course.
Yeah. Rome is such a beautiful place. Italy is such a beautiful place. I'm glad that I visited Rome because you can't go to Italy without at least going and getting that firsthand perspective. Do you find that now that the book is written, that more of you want to go back to Italy to have that experience anew with the book in mind?
Well, I have friends in Venice. We go to Venice a lot. So that's where it's set there as well as Rome. And, you know, and Magdalene's chili for some odd reason, it just, poof,
Uh-huh.
so that happened. That's where the criminal cardinal ends up. But, yeah, so I don't know. I love Italy. I would live there if I could. So, but you can't, the airfare's too high.
It Yeah, I was living in Europe for 12 years, so it was
Oh,
really
it's
easy to,
easier.
oh my
Mm.
gosh, yes, and we were constantly there. Um, how did you strike a balance between the high stakes storytelling and the emotional core of the characters as it applied to the thriller aspect of the plot line?
Well, I wrote a story called Distractions. It's a short story. It was published, and it kind of, they're always with you when you're
Hmm.
writing a story. Like,
Hmm.
so I feel
Hmm.
like they live with me,
Hmm.
they're there when I get up in the morning, when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about where they're gonna, what's gonna happen to them. So I actually, for my first book, I had to write for a class, I had to write something about form, or I had no idea what they were talking about.
Uh-huh.
And these kids would write, like on the margin like this, a whole
Yeah.
story. So I took the characters off the page and had them workshop with their own story with the writer, that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
they're alive to me, so they become part of you. At least for me, that's how
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I can tell you all the backstories of all of my characters as if they're real people. When I talk about them,
Oh,
I
yeah, of
talk about them like they're real because they are real to me.
course, they're real,
Having
they're personalities, and
all
yeah,
of it, I can
exactly.
tell you what they drive, where they live, and it's not even part of the story. I just know what they drive.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
It's excellent that you're having this opportunity to continue the story in such a way that it lends into a retelling per se, but also a continuation of the story. Um, for the next segment of the story, what is it that you're tapping into that's slightly different than the first story without it being a spoiler?
Yeah, well, they, at the end of this one, they mother and daughter reunite, and it's difficult, as you can imagine, because
Yeah.
she's like 13 now, and she was raised in a very strange way in the Vatican. She's very much she's very different from a norm, what would be considered a normal 13-year-old. She's kind of otherworldly and insightful and well read as far as doctrine and things like that, to the point where they kind of, have scholarly religious people come and interview her. I mean, I don't know if you know who the poet Phyllis Wheatley.
Yes.
So I intuited her, and I wrote a diary. It's published, and that moved me so
Yeah.
much. So she's kind of like beyond her years in that respect. So yeah, that's how I do it. I don't know what I'm gonna write until I sit down in front of the computer and I try to, this is weird, but I reread it, what I've written
Uh-huh.
before I sleep at night.
I do
So it
too.
you do,
Yeah.
yes.
So all of my books in primarily for me, I didn't pen my first book until I was 50. And although my niche, my primary niche is children's books, but even with those stories come to me in dreams and visions. They're either awake dreams or sleep dreams. And I also write under several pen names, and all of those stories come. And I say that I'm a conduit of story, that story is spiritual and is all around us. And it's just really looking for someone that's going to be obedient and pen the words that we hear.
But not everybody can see the story in their own life, so of course I weave in,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
careful what you say to a novelist, because
Oh, it's going to end up in print. Everybody knows. Like it should be tattooed across my back. Having already written your other books, the reinventing um, Jenna Rose, and there's a second book to that. Am I getting this right? The Women of 13 Rioni?
Rion, yeah, that's the sequel of sorts. I don't like to call it sequel because it can stand on the continuation of the Vatican Daughter story. And I also wrote a continuation of Reinventing Jenna Rose, but that's still being,
Worked out.
yeah, worked out.
Between the two processes, because they're so uniquely different, between the two processes, what was your greatest takeaway and what was the most valuable lesson that you learned in crafting those two?
Craft, as far as crafting, well, the first book was my thesis for Columbia. So I had my thesis reader, one of them was the former editor of Harper's. He's a hoot and a half. And it took him forever. I thought I'd never graduate. You have to graduate,
Right, right, to get it. Yeah.
graduate. Hello, I'm not going to live forever. Can we get on with it? So he finally finished, and he wrote this very colorful response that I needed to roll up my sleeves and rewrite.
Uh-huh.
go or say, Ben, but I did it. I waited, I stewed, and then I did it and I rewrote the whole thing. So, it had a different title, it had different names of the characters, and I just rewrote it. But, I look back at it and there's a lot of, it's mostly my regrets are through, the marketing
Yeah.
and that whole thing,
Yeah.
and querying to
Mm-hmm.
these, literary agents who
Yeah.
don't even respond half the time,
Mm-hmm.
whole it's a whole land where people don't understand. Oh,
Yeah.
why don't you just self-publish? Well, no,
Yep.
So yeah, but I love my publisher for Vatican Daughter. They've just been amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's a different journey for all authors to decide which is the path that they want their literary work, to go. I
So
have a book idea for you though before we even get to the last segment of this show.
okay, fire away.
I really think you should write a book called The Day in the Life of a Retired Nurse and a Florida Community, just with the antics that you told me, with people knocking on your door and the whole what is this and I got a rash and can
I
I
need
think
to have a pen name though.
you absolutely need a pen name. That's super easy. Listen, I got four of them. You should write that book and or do a podcast
I
that
want to do a podcast, but I have no clue how to start.
we
But
will talk about. Listen,
okay,
offline, I'm going to
slice of,
send that to
slice
you.
of life. Well, because I'm a New Yorker, born and bred, and moving here.
Yes, you can do it like from the, oh, it would be hilarious because just from what you told me before we came on the air, my brain was like, oh my God, she's got like 10 books in there. I hope she knows it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy here. Not to
So,
mention the medical situation down here. Whoa, they'll kill you.
ooh, yeah, that's
Ooh.
a whole different,
People ask me where did you go? Like if you're sick, I said the airport.
the airport.
Oh,
That's hilarious. Okay,
God.
so we've come to the part of my show that I have titled Last Call. So
Okay.
take a sip because you're going to need it. Mm. Ooh, that was a gulp.
You're
Okay.
right.
So these are just a series of rapid fires. Don't
Okay.
think too hard. Just shout out the first thing that comes to your
Got it.
mind.
You got it.
Okay. What's your favorite Italian dish?
Let's see. I don't eat meat, so I guess just pasta. Like I make this amazing gnocchi, burrata cheese,
Ooh,
cherry tomato concoction. That's pretty good.
throw in some spinach and mushrooms, and I am
That's
all
right.
in.
Spinach. I forgot the spinach.
Ooh,
Mushrooms, I'll add next time.
yeah, I'll be right over. If you
Okay.
could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Um, let's see. Who would it be? Pushkin,
Ooh,
the author. I love
okay.
his that none of it is finished. I actually started a short story reviving Pushkin where because I went to Russia and that was an interesting experience. Went to Moscow and then took the overnight train to St. Petersburg, which I highly do not recommend.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, oh, maybe the ghost of Pushkin appears, to a
Yeah, yeah.
journalist. Have a conversation.
Ooh, very
Yeah,
nice.
we're
Very
all like,
nice.
I have all these things started, so I have to live very long time to finish
Yes, just to finish them. But that's a good goal to have for longevity because it is you've got something to look forward to, right? So,
them.
um, what's the last book you read that completely captivated you?
Oh, I'm reading it now. It's called The Immortality Key. Don't ask me the author.
The Immortality.
Key. It's
Ooh,
fascinating. Fascinating. I'm reading it for research and I have to put it away and go back to it because
ooh, I'm gonna add that to my list. Something for me to read
it's
during my
very enlightening.
20-hour flight.
And
Yes.
I'm using it for research on the next book, but I'm really scared that Dan Brown's book coming out in September is in the same vein. And so,
Well, build on that. Utilize that connection, man.
I
Listen,
don't know.
there's nothing new under the sun. Just put the cherry on top of his whipped cream. Call it a day.
Yeah, that's
If you weren't a writer or a nurse, what career path would you have chosen?
acting.
I could see that.
Yeah,
That would be great. Yeah.
too cool.
Yeah,
Thank
I could see that. What's a little known fact about you that others may seem surprised to know?
I'm a gourmet cook. I went
Ooh.
to the French culinary for like 2 weeks. Everybody was so obnoxious. And I said, I saved lives, people. Like, who cares? That was a whole, like, whatever. They went out of business. So they deserved it.
I
Oh,
think you need to add being a comedian to that list.
yeah, people do that. People told me to write funny. It's very hard to write funny. I get it in there, little snippets,
Yeah.
but to write a whole like thing, a whole
Yeah. No, you definitely need humor to carry the story, but yeah, to do a whole like
no,
a
yeah.
rom-com or
I
something. Yeah.
can do it. I mean, I was like, there's no humor in academia, so
Yeah.
I would just blurt these things out, and they thought it was, oh, you should write funny. And
Invented your own segments of Tourette syndrome going just to keep you going.
exactly. Oh God. Yeah.
What's your go-to comfort movie or TV show?
Oh, stuff like oh, I just I just rewatched Northern Exposure,
Yeah.
which I didn't appreciate the first time,
Yeah.
it's on Amazon. So, because I'm here by myself, so I need to veg out
Yeah.
sometimes. So, yeah, I was watching that. I watched, of course, all 35,000 se seasons of what do you call it? ER,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Juliana Margulies went to Sarah Lawrence, you know.
Now that's surprising because my husband served 31 years active duty army and he refuses to watch anything that has anything to do with the military. And if he watches it, he is such a buzzkill because he's like, that's
Oh,
not factual. That would never happen. Your
that's kind of
uniform is not correct. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
that's kind of what I do, but my husband's worse because he's like,
He's a doctor.
this is so stupid that could never happen, which is true. So I mean, you don't do brain surgery in the ER without a mask on. But
You can do it
Hollywood,
on a train.
of course, on the tracks.
Oh, where are the listeners able to follow you and engage with you?
Instagram I'm on. I don't know. I need a podcast, like you said. I have a
I'm going to
website.
work on that. Mm-hmm.
I have a website, and technology is not my strong point, but I grew up with typewriters and whiteout,
Yep.
and land, different
Mm-hmm.
times.
Yep. And when I heard you talk about the typewriters that you had to put the quarter in, I remember those. Oh, yes, ma'am.
20 minutes, hurry up.
Yes.
I type
I
fast.
actually I program computers using key cards, data cards, and where
Wow.
one program was like 1,000 cards, and God forbid you drop them because they weren't numbered. Like you had to deliver them in the stack, and if something happened and you tripped and fell, forget it. You had to start over. So, but that gives us perseverance.
Right.
That gives us adaptability.
Yeah.
Yes. And we know how to roll with it because look,
Thank
get
God
too
for
much
like
feather.
YouTube videos, and
Yep.
they don't
Yep.
always work, but
Yeah.
it's my learning experience.
Well, thank you, Joni.
Not
This has
dead
been,
yet.
yeah, this has been so much fun.
So much fun. Thank you so much. You're
You're
awesome.
welcome. And this wraps up another episode of On the Air with Florenza. You may follow me on all social media platforms under Florenza Lee or via my website at florenza.org. Until next time, cheers.